Hello, welcome to Live Talk for Thursday, October the 12th, 2017. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thanks for being with us today.
We got I think, a pretty interesting story, and it's one that, show that it's a subject that really needs to be talked about. We've talked about it before, but it needs to be reiterated once in a while. But before we get to that, I don't know if people are following this story. It's from right here in Texas. A illegal alien here in Texas, underaged, wanting an abortion. The ACLU and some other pro-abortion degenerates are bringing lawsuits against the state, saying that she has basically a constitutional right to have an abortion in Texas. And this is following up on a similar situation in California. They're trying to piggyback them together. And basically, and of course, since in California they pay for abortions, basically what the pro-aborts are saying is that not only does the taxpayer have an obligation to pay for someone else's abortion, which I can tell you in years past when we would debate abortions and bring that up, they'd always say, oh, we never are going to do that. Of course, they were lying at the time. And
if they could get away with it,
right.
They're going to do it.
And but anyway, so not only are they saying that someone who's here illegally from another country has a right to an abortion, but we have an obligation to pay for it.
This sounds like Oregon to me. This is exactly what is going on in Oregon. And
right.
No, and Trump is not
backing down.
He's not backing down, no.
And neither is Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas. Now, a judge has ruled, has dismissed this lawsuit, but the ACLU and these other raging pro-abort degenerates are saying they're going to pursue it from here. But the sheer gall of these people.
Oh, yeah.
The gall of them, it has no limits.
They don't stop at anything.
No. To sit here and suggest that someone who's here in the country illegally now has a constitutional right to access our court system.
Right.
And she's a minor.
On top of that.
And she has a constitutional right to have an abortion. My argument is that if you're here illegally, I don't know what constitutional rights you think you have.
None. Absolutely none.
But now they're talking about letting people here illegally vote and hold public office.
Yeah, they're trying to make Texas a sanctuary city, which
a state, yeah,
or a state, but it doesn't. I don't think it's going to happen.
But it's just unbelievable where our country is headed. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
It's scary.
And one of the things I was talking about to someone who called here yesterday, complaining about something that Donald Trump had done, and there's a lot of things he's done that are kind of buffoonish and kind of junior high school type activities and stuff. And you and I were talking about this yesterday. I want people out there in the pro-life community and in the pro-family and in the Christian community to, when you want to criticize Donald Trump, and believe me, he does a lot of things that are warranting of criticism, ask yourself if you think you'd have been better off with Hillary Clinton as president. Because I think where we would be right now already, if this woman had been elected president, I think this country would be in a state of near collapse. It's almost there anyway.
We would be in huge trouble.
We would be in huge trouble if this woman was president,
yeah.
or Bernie Sanders, or any of these, or Elizabeth Warren,
any liberal,
any of these godless leftists.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my daughter the other day, and I told her that even at her young age, at 15, she is able to see history being rewritten. And I told her that when she has children, that they're not going to have a clue what my upbringing was, what your upbringing was. And so I tried to explain, like, the Columbus Day they're trying to do away with, and just try to explain everything to her that's going on and what they're doing. So,
and it's almost impossible to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking about her and her children then growing up in a different environment. You grew up in a different America than I did.
Yeah.
We've talked about how much different. We've talked about this many times. How much different this country was.
Yeah.
When I grew up than what it was when you grew up, and now it's exponentially different.
With her upbringing, yeah.
Than what you grew up with.
Generation. Yep.
My wife and I were watching a television show last night, and they were talking about stuff and saying things and showing things, and I'm thinking, when I was a kid, this would have been considered pornography. What we're watching on broadcast television last night. this would have been considered pornography.
Yeah, it's shocking. Even for me, not even being bring up in your era, but
Right.
it's disgusting.
Some of the stuff that's being done out there,
Just that, yeah.
and we did a show years ago when Zentro was still here about this issue of what children can see now because of the internet.
Everything.
And your 15-year-old daughter, or if she were 5 years old, she'd have the same access. She has access to stuff on the internet that would have embarrassed a Jeep load of Marines 25 years ago
Right.
that they wouldn't have been able to access.
Right.
But she can make 2 clicks on the internet and find it.
Well, or music that
Right.
is on the radio, and the cuss words, the F-bomb, that
Everything.
anyways,
Right.
things have changed for
Things
sure.
have dramatically changed.
Yes.
Well, anyway, we had a viewer named Margie who contacted us with a show suggestion.
Yes.
And we're getting a lot of suggestions in now.
We
in
are.
fact, I think 3 or 4 of our last shows have all been suggestions that people in the audience
Yeah,
made.
they have been.
And you even actually sent them their mugs.
I know. I'm
amazing?
remembering.
Right. Anyway, Margie called, and she had been through a very traumatic experience. I'll let you talk about that here in a minute. But what she was saying is that we need to focus in on end-of-life issues as well.
Yes.
And things like infanticide
Yes.
that aren't directly abortion, and then end-of-life issues like
Yeah,
euthanasia. And so
euthanasia.
forth.
Yeah.
And she's right, and we have done that in the past. We have talked about that. Before we go further, give the viewers a little bit of idea of what this poor lady went through.
Okay. Yeah, she really wants us to be aware of what's going on. She lives in Washington, a state that has euthanasia legalized.
Right.
And her husband in 2009 had cancer, went into remission, and then again in the spring of 2016, got the same diagnosis here. This time he chose not to do radiation, and they went to the doctor together and, told them that he would like to spend his last few months at home, and they honored that. They did tell them that they were pro-life and very Christian, and that a euthanasia was not an option. They didn't even want to discuss it, period. And so they would go to their house, and she said it was like a whirlwind. I mean, they were giving him medications that she wasn't really aware of.
Was he under hospice care?
He was under hospice care, which she said that also that Medicaid pays for, and that's basically a bailout for the government, because Medicaid, they charge Medicare so much for that, and she wants us to be aware of what goes on, with the insurance as well. But she said that it was just a whirlwind. Her husband was on medications left and right, different things. The nurse came in and told her basically what it was like to die, and went into horrible descriptive detail about what he would be facing. And she stopped that nurse immediately, his wife did, and told her that they were done with it. And she even called as soon as she got back to the office and said, "Don't you ever do that again, or you will not be allowed in my house." And so, anyways, long story short, she was exhausted. It was her and her daughter and her daughter's husband that took care of her husband, and he needed a lot of care, and she was exhausted. So she sent him to a hospice life house, and under her assumption, he still had months to live. Within 36 hours, he had passed away. And I asked her if she thought it was euthanasia, and she didn't want to go there. She didn't want to talk about it. It's very hard on her, because this is still recent. He passed away a little over 2 months ago. So,
and she probably feels guilty for having put him in that
situation. And so, yeah, I mean, we prayed together before I got off the phone with her, and he's in God's hands right now, and he's not hurting anymore. He's being taken care of, and so, anyway, she just wants us to be aware of what's going on with euthanasia and the physician-assisted suicide.
Well, we've seen this. We've had these similar stories, but basically, what this woman is suggesting is that when she put him in hospice care, they didn't try to make his final days.
They didn't extend it by any means.
They tried to end him.
Oh, yeah. They didn't.
36 hours later, he's dead.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this sort of thing more and more commonly.
Right.
Especially in states like Washington and Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
And California will be in the same situation. But the interesting thing is to look at foreign countries where now people are saying that they're being euthanized. Relatives of people are saying their relatives have been euthanized against their will, and that you're having situations now where people who may be terminally ill. You know what? You're terminally ill right now. We're all terminal. We're all going to die.
Right.
But they're saying that they're encouraging these people, like this woman that you're saying was basically giving a sales pitch. Here's how horrible here's the death you horribly face. You ought to just go ahead and let us inject you.
And that's what that's what I said to her. I said, were they trying to sell euthanasia? I mean, is that what they were doing? She goes, I don't know. And I went, it sounded like it.
That's what it is.
They want to show you how horrible and how bad it is. And
well, first off, it's obvious they're trying to sell it, because if not, why would you tell this person?
Why would you even bring it up?
Why would you bring it up? You're fixing to go through some real hell,
I know. And she goes, can you imagine what my husband was feeling and thinking at that moment?
Right.
It's so sad.
I have, I used to have my best friend here in the area was a nephrologist, a kidney doctor, and he was telling me about some of his patients were because of the specialty that he was in. He had a lot of patients that were terminal, but not all of them. And sometimes they'd be very, very ill, and they might be close to death, but they could rally back. And he was telling me about a patient that he had, this woman here in Denton, that she was in this situation where her kidneys were failing, and she had cancer, and she had some other issues. And but he said, I was treating her, and I thought she's got a chance of making it. And I'm going to keep treating her. Her relatives showed up and said, we want you to stop treatment of her. And one of them accosted him in the parking lot of the hospital here and threatened to beat him up if he didn't cease treating his mother. But he didn't. He got a judge to allow him to keep treating her. They were saying, look, she's terminal and she's using up all of her money. In other words, the money that she's going to leave to us, she's using up.
Oh, yeah.
And he said,
like, that's a big deal.
Roger said,
I guess to some people it is. But.
Right. I'm not going to do that. The reason this came up is he and I went out to lunch one day, and at a local cafeteria here, and the woman behind the counter that was waiting on us was her. And he said, I'll tell you about that woman when we sit down. He said, that woman, her relatives tried to kill her off about 6 months ago. He said, I wouldn't quit treating her. We had to go to court. And the court finally ruled in my favor.
Wow.
And he said, that's her standing behind the counter right there.
So, I mean, there's no end to what they're going to try to push
the pro-death
next.
people in this country. And this is another example, Renee, of what we talked about before. You have to understand that at its core, we can talk about, and we do talk about, because we're a very pragmatic pro-life organization, we do very pragmatic things. But at its core, this is a spiritual battle. And this is a battle between life and death. And God told us to choose life. Satan tells us to choose death. Whether it's the unborn, or people like Margie's husband,
elderly,
or this lady here in Denton.
Yeah, or just somebody with terminal cancer, or terminal illness, disease, whatever.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
They're pushing death. These people, I've called them before death merchants, and I've even had pro-life people criticize me and say, well, don't be calling them names. They're not death merchants. They just disagree with us. No, they are death merchants. That's what they're in business to sell, is death. And that nurse that walked in there and started telling this guy how horrible his death was going to be. She was selling death right then.
Yeah, she
We
was.
can give you a better death than the one you got coming. That's
Right.
what she was doing.
Basically, yeah.
But here's the thing that Margie and others need to understand about this particular issue, because I totally agree that the pro-life movement is not just about the life of the unborn. It's got to be about the life of all human beings from the moment of fertilization to the moment of natural death. But we focus on abortion for a very, very pragmatic reason. If you look at all this legislation that's been passed over the years, allowing euthanasia or infanticide or any other artificially induced death of a living human being, all of those bills, all that legislation uses as its basis Roe versus Wade. That it's a privacy issue. Roe versus Wade established this right for a woman to terminate the life of her unborn child.
Right.
That sets a precedent for everything else. And what I'm saying to you is, and what I'm saying to people like Margie and to the others that call in and say, you guys need to be doing more on euthanasia and infanticide and those kind of issues, especially euthanasia, end-of-life issues, is, listen, you'll never stop euthanasia in a country where abortion is legal. It's not physically possible to do that because abortion sets the tone. Abortion is the thing that makes euthanasia possible. And the people that are pushing euthanasia and pushing infanticide, and you have these moral defectives like Peter Singer at Princeton University and others, and there's many others, saying that even parents of a child up to 28 months or something like that, or 28 weeks or whatever he's saying,
Right.
ought to be allowed to have that baby euthanized.
Right. Yeah.
It is abortion that paved the way for every one of those things. And you're never going to stop them until you stop abortion. So yes, we do focus on abortion almost exclusively, except when we talk about these issues like this. Because the fact is, again, if we don't stop abortion, we'll never stop these other things. So this is the gateway. This is where we have to draw the line in the sand.
Yeah. That's right. That's true.
And so, Margie, I fully understand what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate your giving us the suggestion for this show, because it's a show that needs to be done, and I'm sure we'll do the same show again in the future. But just understand that the reason we focus on abortion exclusively is just what I said. If we don't stop that, we're never going to stop any of these other things. And again, I'm going to bring up something I think we brought up on a show just the other day. We better hope that God was just teasing us when he said, you reap what you sow. Because we've got a whole generation of people now, for the last 40 years, two or three generations of people, that have killed the unborn because they were inconvenient, unhealthy, or too expensive.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Now, that generation that survived, the people in that generation that survived, are now going to be making decisions about people like me, and in not too distant future, people like you, and even people like your children. And they're going to be saying, you know what? You guys are inconvenient, unhealthy, and expensive. And so that generation is going to visit exactly upon the future what was visited upon them
Right.
by us. And so if that's the case, then our only hope is that God was just teasing us when he said, you reap what you sow, because we're going to reap what we sow. This nation is going to reap what it has sown. And you're seeing it in issues like this.
Yes, you are.
And
many others.
And many others, many other life issues. But we have to continue fighting. God called us to this fight, and this is what we have to do. Whether it's, like I said, euthanasia, infanticide, abortion, whatever it is, this is a spiritual battle at its core. And we have to recognize that. God has called us to this battle. The good news is he promised us victory. He said the gates of hell wouldn't prevail against you. And that's not a commandment to play defense. That's a commandment to go on offense. He's saying they will not prevail against you. He did not say that we wouldn't prevail against them. He said they will not prevail against you. So that means we're supposed to be attacking.
Yeah, we're fighting from victory.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's what Father Frank always says. We're not fighting for victory. We're fighting from victory.
Oh, really?
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's one of his favorite statements. But
It
but
is.
that's true.
Yeah, because Jesus defeated Satan.
And
And
all he
rose
calls
again.
all he calls us to do is to fight.
That's right.
And that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So
That's right.
you hang in there, Margie, and thank you for the for the suggestion. And by the way, I've already seen the order because we know that Renee has this tendency not to send people their cups, because if you send in a suggestion for a show, you get a Life Dynamics mug. But I've already seen the order for your mug, Margie, and it's on the way.
It's on its way.
Anyway, you got anything else? Any comments from anybody that we need to talk about? Or
Nope, nothing else.
we're done?
We're done.
All right. If you have any suggestions for a show, just like Margie did, be sure and send them to Renee.
Yep.
She's the one who brings them to me, and we sit and decide what shows we're going to do. And we're getting a lot of good suggestions. Well, I think we've had some really good shows recently just because of people out there. And I want to remind you that this is not our show. This is your show. We started this show to serve you. We're not the stars of this. You are. We need your help to make this show successful. And another way you can help make it successful is not only by sending in your suggestions, by making sure that all your friends know to watch Life Talk, all your pro-life friends know to watch and to get on the trail. I don't know how they do that, they get notified when there's a show coming up. We did our show today early, but we normally do it 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon. But anyway, you can get notified electronically.
Yeah.
So
They just have to friend you on Facebook.
is that all they have to do?
That's all they have to do.
I don't make it.
Or they can friend me on Facebook.
I don't monkey with all that stuff. But anyway, just try to get all your friends to watch.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good information that they're not going to get on secular television or on the regular news feeds or any kind of television. Don't think for a moment that this show we did today would have been done on the secular news. It would not have been done.
Right.
They would not have ever connected abortion to euthanasia.
Never. They would have covered it up,
They
put
would.
it under the rug. We're also on YouTube as well. This goes on. We have a YouTube page called Life Talk TV, so
Right.
you can visit us there as well.
Right. So you can see all the past shows. They're all out there either on Facebook or on YouTube.
They're all archived.
So you can see any past shows. But anyway, that's all the time we have. You have anything else?
Nothing else.
We're out of time until Thursday. This is Thursday, until next Tuesday. Remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.
See you then.